Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So, folks, obviously we know that this game that we've got coming up against the Rams is going to be an absolutely very, very difficult game. The Rams are a good team. The Rams have a lot of good pieces. They've played well on offense. They've played well on defense this year. And there's a lot of people that are looking at this game and they're like, okay, what can the Lions realistically do to try and get a victory? That's honestly what a lot of people right now are looking at. A lot of Lions podcasters are trying to find a potential area where they think the Lions could gain an edge. A lot of outside, podcasters and analysts, they're trying to do the same thing. They're all trying to find something that the Lions could potentially use to try and get a victory against the Rams. Because the Lions are already coming into this game as 4.5 underdogs. They're already coming into this game as the betting, favorite to lose. So it's like, okay, here, what realistically is the shot that the Lions have of winning? What realistic chance do they have of winning? What is something that they can use to even try and get a win? That's why right now everybody's kind of looking at this game as if the Lions are going to have to pull out all the stops and they're going to have to play their best A game if they really want to beat the Rams. And I'm going to say this right now, that is definitely true. The Lions are going to have to play their best football against the Rams if they want to try and beat the Rams. Because the Lions are a good team, but the Rams are one of the best teams in the NFL. Now, like I just said, they're going to have to play their best football because certainly the Lions are not going to get a victory by being sloppy or undisciplined. That's just not going to happen. However, many think that the Lions are probably going to have to follow their tried and true method from the past in order to do so. That they're just going to have to take what they've done really well in the past, they're going to have to refine it, they're going to have to make it really, really good, and that's what they're going to have to do. And maybe to a certain point, they probably will try to do just that. But I just thought of something while I was sitting at my desk yesterday, and I was kind of trying to do the exact same thing. So, there's got to be something that the Lions could realistically use. There has to be something. And all of a sudden, I started looking at the other losses that the Rams have had this year, which, of course, there's not very many of those. There's only 3 of them. And I started doing some deep diving into everything, and I was like, as soon as I started looking at a particular thing that started really showing itself up, I found something that I don't think anybody is going to be paying attention to. And this particular thing that I'm talking about, it actually is going to be something that I know a lot of Lions fans are not going to think is something that's really good for the Lions. In fact, most Lions fans have viewed this very thing that I'm about to talk about as an extreme negative that the Lions have been dealing with. But yet, that negative has, in my mind, given the Lions the ability to have a massive positive then turned against the Rams to help them get the victory. Now, understand what I just said there, to help them get the victory. Again, not guaranteeing a victory. I'm not saying that the Lions will win. I'm not saying that this will absolutely get them the victory. I'm saying that it can help them get it. Now, what exactly am I referring to? Well, let's just put this in the simplest phrase that I know how to. Everyone in the NFL knows that speed kills. Speed is absolutely lethal. And the Lions certainly have plenty of speed on their roster. However, the speed that I'm talking about here, it doesn't completely correlate directly to either JMO or to Gibbs. It does in another way, but it does not directly correlate to them. Rather, instead, it has to do with how the Lions' offense has had to speed itself up over the course of this year to try and function. And what I mean by that specifically is that if you take a look at the Lions' offense throughout the course of the year, specifically through the passing game, they've had to speed up their offensive attack through the air in a number of ways because of how poor their offensive line has played this year as a collective unit for the majority of it. And like I said, many have viewed the Lions' offensive line in terms of its pass blocking as a weakness. But what I'm about to show you here is that that weakness could actually be turned into a very formidable weapon against the Rams. And simply put, it is by allowing Jared Goff to do what he has done absolutely better than any other quarterback this season, and to exploit the West Coast offense to its absolute fullest. And that is simply by getting the ball in and out of his hands so fast that the defense simply can't react. I know, that sounds really, really freaking simple. But what is the best thing I can say about this whole thought process? Simplicity might just actually be what you need to go with here. You don't need to try and find something super ass complicated. Again, sometimes the best thing is the simplest thing. First, let's actually take a look at what the statistical evidence has to show about this whole thought process. If you go to PFF, you would see that the Lions don't have a good pass blocking grade for their offense. It's only at a 62.6. That's not very good. It's not terrible, on the other hand, either. It's below average. Let's just call it for what it is. So, 62.6. Well, when we keep that in mind, I then decided to say, okay, here, what does Goff's, time in pocket stats look like? Or another way to put it, what does his time to throw look like when he's actually in the pocket and he's throwing? You want to take a gander how fast Jared Goff is getting the ball out of his hands on average this year? His average time to throw this year is at a 2.57 seconds. 2.57. And you want to know what's funny about that? Like I said, that's the second fastest time in the NFL this year. The only person that it's second to is Tua Tagovailoa's time, which is at 2.5 seconds flat. Now, what that should tell you is that, like I said, the Lions' offensive line has not been very good this year in terms of pass blocking because the time to throw is a direct correlation to the offensive line's inability to give time consistently to throw the ball down the field. That's part of the reason why the Lions have not been throwing the ball deep a whole lot this year. However, what makes Goff different in this particular statistical category is that rather instead of the Lions, only being able to throw quick patterns and it being a weakness, it actually has instead proven to be a massive boon for the Lions. Let me show you exactly what I mean. If you take a look at Jared Goff's 2025 time to throw stats, for less than 2.5 seconds or equal to it, so less than or equal to 2.5 seconds, Jared Goff has completed 81.6% of his passes, number one in the NFL. He's got 1,800 passing yards, number one in the NFL. 8.5 average a throw, number one in the NFL. 19 passing touchdowns, second in the NFL. 9% touchdown percentage per throw. 1 interception, which is tied fifth. 0.5 interception percentage rate per throw. And 130 passer rating, which is number one in the NFL. I've said this before in more ways than I can care to enumerate. I'm not a mathematician, but when I see number one, 4 times in a particular statistical set of categories, that tells me something. When you think about it, Jared Goff is quite literally the best at processing and the fastest quarterback there is in getting the ball out of his hands and having it make a damn difference. Literally, when you take a look at that, there are 6 rankings that are able to be quantified. Jared Goff is number 1 in 4 out of the 6 rankings when it comes to throwing the ball in less than 2.5 seconds. Number 1 in 4 out of 6. And every single ranking that I have up there, all of them are top 5. Now, here's where it gets even better. If you take a look at Jared Goff's time to throw stats in 2.5 seconds or equal to it, Jared Goff gets 54% of his yards this year from this particular category. 54% of his yards have come off of throwing the ball out of his hands in 2.5 seconds or less. Furthermore, 73.1% of Jared Goff's touchdowns this year have come from this particular category as well. So I was like, well, hot damn. That right there tells me that for Jared Goff, he has figured out not only to take something that he's already really good at, but he has turned it into a massive weapon that few other quarterbacks are really particularly good at. Because let's just call it for what it is. Any defense, I don't care what defensive edge rusher you have, is going to need about 2 to 3 seconds to try to get at the quarterback to impact them. Well, if you're getting the ball out of your hands in 2.5 seconds or thereabouts almost every single play, there's no way a defense is really going to be able to impact you very often. That's why, even though the offensive line has been particularly bad this year in protecting Jared Goff, he's one of the fewest sacked quarterbacks in the NFL, despite the fact that there have been games where he's been sacked 3 times. Think about that. So then I was like, okay, that's a really interesting set of circumstances. That's a really interesting set of stats. Now, I don't have to state the obvious prolificness of those stats, but I'm going to anyway. When you have a quarterback that has the ability to process information and make decisions faster than almost anybody, that's a weapon that's going to make a massive difference. Well, the reason that's particularly important is because when you consider what the basic West Coast offense is, and I mean the absolute basic, you take out all the little, you take out all the little extra stuff that's been added over the last, 20, 30, 40 years. What is the basic West Coast offense? It is a passing offense that is an extension of the run. And it's done that way because either you have a weak-armed quarterback that can't extend the ball down the field, or you have a weak offensive line that can't pass block very well. Well, for the Lions, the second is the reason. Jared Goff, we have seen very, very often in the past, can actually throw the ball well down the field and has the ability to uncork a bomb for 60, 65 yards, no problem. The problem is that when your offensive line can't block worth a damn, you can't really extend the ball down the field as much as you'd like to. So, when your offensive line is having a weak season in terms of pass blocking, going back to the very fundamentally basic understanding of what the West Coast offense is a very good thing to have in your arsenal. Now, I will say this though. The one thing that has kept the Lions' offensive line going for the most part this year has been the fact that they are really good in run blocking. At least according to PFF. I believe they're at an 85, 86, something like that this year in terms of run blocking. But why is this important in this particular context? Well, the reason it's important is because you go back to the game we just went against the Cowboys. When we started the game early and we were trying to get our offense going, what did the Lions do? The Lions did the exact thing that I'm talking about here. They got the ball in and out of Jared Goff's hands in a hurry. They weren't trying to take shots down the field early on. They were trying to get the ball out quickly, so then that way it would give Goff a breather, so that way he wasn't constantly under duress, but at the same time it would force the Cowboys defense to have to play back. Because rather than pitting their ears forward, or backwards, pardon me, and then just, sending everybody in the direction of trying to get him, it's like, listen, if the ball's coming out before you can get there, then there's no sense in blitzing him. There's no sense in just trying to go after him every single time. You're going to have to play coverage. Well, the one thing we know about Jared Goff also is that he can read coverages almost as good as anybody. So it's like, okay, once you get the defense into that particular frame of mind, now you can start playing the offense a little bit more differently. which is exactly what the Lions did. Once they got the Cowboys into having to play coverage rather than trying to blitz and pressure him, that was when they were able to open the intermediate passing game. And again, go back to that Cowboys game, the Lions didn't really get a whole hell of a lot out of their running game in terms of yards. They got a lot out of it in scoring touchdowns, but yards they certainly didn't. That was primarily where the passing game came into effect. That was where we got our yards to move the ball. So when you think about that, the Lions have the speed not only in a quarterback that can get the ball out of their hands really fast, but then you take a look at all the other weapons that we have that do have that lethal speed and that explosive factor, such as Gibbs, such as JMO. You have guys that are so fast on the perimeter that not only do you have a quarterback that can get it into their hands really fast, you then have these receivers that once the ball does get into their hands, they be gone. So, now I come to this part. Why is that important as to a matter of fact as to how this can be used for the Lions to get a victory against the Rams? Because it's already been used against the Rams to get a victory against them. You want to know when it was used? Go back to Week 5 versus the 49ers. The 49ers had to jump across town to go and play the Rams in their particular place. In that game, the 49ers were coming into that game without their starting quarterback. They had 3 receivers down. They also didn't have George Kittle. And they had just lost Nick Bosa as well. I mean, yikes. You want to talk about a team that's in dire straits. They have got a plethora of injuries to a lot of key players. They're coming into another they're coming into another stadium for a home team, and they don't even have their starting quarterback. But yet somehow they win 26-23 in overtime against the Rams. How in the hell is that even possible? The answer, simply put, is that Kyle Shanahan did exactly what I'm talking about here. He realized and had the wherewithal to understand that when you have a backup quarterback and a severely hampered offense, you need to keep the quarterback safe and comfortable with quick passes and use the running game just enough to keep the defense honest. Because if you go back to that game where the 49ers went into, SoFi Stadium and played the Rams at home, care to take a gander at what Mac Jones' numbers were in that game? Mac Jones completed 67.3% of his passes for 342 yards, only 7 an average a throw, but he had 2 passing touchdowns for no picks, a 100.9 passer rating, and a 74 QBR. For a backup quarterback, especially one like Mac Jones, who was absolutely, considered a bust, to then come into a game and, he's playing for Kyle Shanahan, which, let's understand something here, Kyle Shanahan is a quarterback whisperer, but for Kyle Shanahan to put together a game plan which kept that quarterback safe, that's brilliant. Because you want to know what Mac Jones' average time to throw was in that game? It was an absolutely blazing 2.33 seconds. That's freaking almost 0.2 seconds, less than 2.5 seconds. It means that the Rams couldn't get their hands on him because the ball was out of his hands before they could even get a chance to get close to him. Because if I recall correctly, I think Mac Jones was only sacked 1 time in that game. So if the Rams couldn't get to Mac Jones, and Mac Jones was able to lead the 49ers to a victory in Week 5, what makes you think that Jared Goff can't do it? Jared Goff is immeasurably better than Mac Jones is as a quarterback. There's no doubt about that. And before you all start thinking that, you know what? That doesn't correlate. That's not that big of a deal. Really? Let's think about this. You want to know what happened the second time the 49ers played the freaking Rams? And, by the way, this was when the 49ers were at their home stadium, which happened, a couple of weeks later when Mac Jones was still the quarterback. You want to know what Mac Jones' time to throw was in that game compared to the game that I just talked about in Week 5? It was 2.83 seconds. So it was a whole half a second longer than it was in Week 5. And you want to know what happened in that second game when they were at the 49ers home stadium? Oh, that's right. The 49ers lost 26-42. That's a pretty damn interesting correlation now, if I do say so myself. And the funny part about all this is that the Lions have seen this very methodology used against them. Go back to the first game of 2024 when the Rams came to our home stadium. When the Rams' offensive line was depleted. You want to know how the Rams were able to keep in that game and make it close to where, you know what, they had a chance to beat us, but we just grounded out in the beginning stages of the overtime and they couldn't do anything against us? They did the exact same thing I'm talking about right here. We could not get after freaking, Matthew Stafford because they kept throwing the ball literally within less than a second and a half, less than 2 seconds. I remember watching that broadcast and the broadcasters kept saying, listen, you take a look at what the Rams are doing. Stafford is literally getting the ball out of his hands so fast that it doesn't matter what kind of pass rush the Lions have. They can't get to him because the ball is getting out of his hands in like 1.7 seconds, 2 seconds, 2.2 seconds. You just can't get after a quarterback that fast no matter how great of a pass rush you have. So the Lions themselves have seen this being used against them and it works. And like I'm saying, if Mac Jones can do it against the Rams this year in Week 5 when he's down 3 receivers and his all-pro tight end, and you now have to rely heavily on backup wide receivers and CMC, so Christian McCaffrey, to sustain the offense, if the Lions, if the 49ers can do that against the Rams, then there's no way in hell in my mind the Lions can't do it because what is realistically the only thing that the Lions are not going to have on their offense compared to what the 49ers didn't have on their offense in Week 5? They're just not going to have Sam Laporta. That's it. They still got St. Brown. They still got J-Mo. They still got Isaac Tesla. They've still got Gibbs. They've still got Monty. So other than Laporta, they've got all of their offensive ensemble. And you want to know what the best part about this is? Is that everybody that they have is better than what the 49ers had in that game. Gibbs is better than Christian McCaffrey. I don't give a damn what anyone wants to say. Goff is immeasurably better than, Mac Jones. Amon-Ra St. Brown is better than Kendrick Bourne, who was their number 1 receiver in that game. And that's not even including, Monty, J-Mo, and Tesla. It's just not. So it's like, listen, you have a better ensemble of talent that's available in this game than what was in that game. You know the strategy because you've seen it been used against you before. Your quarterback's been doing it all damn year. So just use it to its fullest in this game. And then, to round out this whole thought process, you want to know what makes this even better? Is that not only do the Lions have the perhaps fastest processing quarterback in the NFL in terms of understanding where the ball is supposed to go on any particular snap, and that guy is particularly decisive and accurate as hell, you have to think about this as well. The Lions can then take that type of a speed-up offense, and then they can turn it into another methodology. Now you can start using a hurry-up, speed-up offense. Can you imagine how impossible it would be for the Rams to try and stop our offense if we not only used quick throws that are decisive, accurate, and they know where they're going, but then on top of that, you add a hurry-up offense into that to where you're just, marching up and down the field like it's a 2-minute drive every single damn time. We've seen the Lions do that in the past where it's like, hey, you know what? It's 2 minutes. You got to drive down the field. You've got to get the ball out. You got to make sure it's accurate. You got to make sure you know what you're doing. Goff has shown that he can do that. Why not apply that entire process to the entire game and not only quick, deliberate throw strikes or rapid-fire strikes in that sense, but then on top of that, you do a hurry-up offense on top of it. There's no way in hell the Rams' defense could keep up. They would be absolutely gassed by the second or third series. Now, the side note to that is that if you do that too much and if you do it too well, then your defense on the same flip side is going to get tired out, especially when it goes up against the Rams offense with Matthew Stafford and also with Sean McVay. But the point of the matter is this. The Lions do have a recipe in which they can win. It's been used already this year when the 49ers went to SoFi and played the Rams in Week 5. They did it with Mac Jones. They can do it with Jared Goff. Now, how you balance that all out to make sure your defense doesn't get as gassed as you're trying to do to the opposing defense of the Rams, that's something that takes a little bit more understanding and game planning, which obviously that's going to come down to, Goff, John Morton, and also to Dan Campbell. But the point is that you can find a methodology of victory from this. You just have to apply it, and you have to make sure that you can use it all throughout the game. It's that simple. But anyway, you guys take this information what you will. Again, I've provided my facts, I've provided the stats, I've provided the analytics. It's now up to you to decide if you actually think it's worth actually being something that the Lions could do. But anyway, I've come to the end of my episode, so I'm going to end it and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do this. Like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you enjoyed the content, and if by chance you also like the content, I hope to gain your subscription if you've not yet done so already. But if you did subscribe in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you now had a chance to do so, I want to highly encourage y'all, please, make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys can never miss any more episodes that I push out. Hope y'all are doing well. Hope y'all got some in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.